What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. It is Victory Monday for myself, Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Gotta love to see that. We're coming at you with a rookie mock draft. Today, we're going through basically our top 12 rankings, quote unquote, how we would go through a rookie mock draft if we were having it right now. I highly suggest you wait till after the draft to do a rookie mock or to do a rookie draft in general. But we're going to go through the rookies as we see them for your upcoming rookie drafts because it's officially Dynasty season now that the NFL is over and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have hoisted the Vince Lombardi Trophy.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Maybe I always have to make this joke, but maybe my team behind me is feeling that feeling next year.
We'll see. Which never happens because you're the Dallas Cowboys. And you guys think you're going to win it every year, but you never do. Yeah. So basically what the rules of this mock are, we'll get into those. Let's hit the intro first. All right, so the rules of this mock draft. We are going to be doing a super flex mock draft. I know some of you on the live stream asked if we're going to be doing a one quarterback or a super flex. For this one, we're going to do a super flex. We'll kind of talk about the differences between a super flex and a one quarterback as we're going through it, and maybe we'll go and do a one quarterback one down the line if you guys want to see that. Maybe you guys play in more one quarterback dynasty leagues. Me and Danny personally, I have never played in a one quarterback dynasty league. I've only played in super flex dynasty. So I'm more familiar with this, and I personally just like it better because the quarterbacks are much more valuable, which is how it should be. They're the most valuable position in sports. And we're not doing a tight end premium. I know a lot of people play in those kind of leagues too. I personally just don't really like them. It's not a very valuable position in the NFL. I don't see a reason to upgrade its value as well. Basically, what we're going to be doing is Danny's going to be picking odds. I'm going to be picking evens. We're going to alternate picks. We're going to talk about the players briefly. We're going to go more in depth later on as we go forward. But the general point of this is to get a sense of our tiers, how we see the rookies and the difference between the 105 versus the 107 and all that kind of stuff. Me and Danny are going to disagree a little bit on certain players, but the tiers is the important part. And basically what this can help you guys do is formulate your own tiers with the help of our draft guide, which you can purchase at the bottom of the screen. Pre-order that, coming out March 1st. But without further ado, there's a lot of talk. Let's get into this. The 101, Danny, you were on the board.
I mean, as Bush mentioned, we're going to differ a little bit in tiers. He's got more names in this tier. The 101 to me, as of today, again, obviously landing spots could differ or impact this a bit, but the 101 is Trevor Lawrence, because guess what? Trevor Lawrence is in a tier of his own in the real NFL draft, and he's going to be the first overall pick. Now, when we're talking about Trevor Lawrence, you guys are going to see my full thoughts on him in our draft guide. But man, to start it off, he is the prototypical modern-day Konami quarterback. You're looking at guys like Josh Allen. You're looking at guys like Justin Herbert in recent years. Guess what? Trevor Lawrence is a more refined version of either of those guys coming out of school. I mean, you're looking
what they are now, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. You're looking at the intangible traits. Obviously, he's got the football IQ. Okay, whatever. Does that impact fantasy points? Maybe to a certain degree in terms of understanding the offense and getting on the field. But what I look for when I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence is the tangible traits that this kid possesses. I mean, you're talking about it. 6'6", 220-pound size, great mobility. We saw, 2019 semifinal game, like a 65-yard rushing touchdown from him.
Yeah.
And then I'm not even talking about that howitzer he has attached to his right arm, because this guy pushes it down the field like no other in terms of velocity, in terms of overall arm angles, everything. Like, he has the full package from an NFL perspective. The concern here would be, do the Jaguars have enough infrastructure to really build around him? But as far as the talent goes, I mean, this guy's going to step into the NFL and be a top 10 type quarterback, to be quite honest.
Yeah. So if I'm doing this right now, if I'm doing this from a talent basis, which is basically what we're going to be doing, landing spots will 100% impact how we see the rookie tiers and the rookie drafts going in general. But as of right now, yes, Trevor Lawrence is in a tier of his own from a talent perspective. However, I said landing spots are going to impact you. We know his landing spot. He's going to the Jaguars.
Yeah.
And the reason I see other guys in his tier, and this could change again based on where those other guys land, but Trevor Lawrence going to Jacksonville, I'm not excited about it. What Jacksonville has done around him, hiring Brian Schottenheimer and Darrell Bevell as basically the engine of the offense with Urban Meyer, who's never been an NFL head coach. or a coach in general in the NFL. I just don't have a lot of faith in their current situation. We'll see what they add. We'll see how they improve around Trevor Lawrence. From a talent perspective, yes, he is 100% the 101. He is still my 101 as of right now, but I think there's other guys closer, basically making up that gap via their landing spots. So we have Lawrence at the 101. This may change depending on your current team. Obviously, you guys are looking at this from the context of your own dynasty team, and me and Danny kind of are as well because we're in a couple dynasty leagues also. So if you have, let's say you have Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Daniel Jones at quarterback, you probably don't need Trevor Lawrence. So you're probably better served to trade that pick. Maybe you want to pick a different player at a different position at the 101. I personally would just trade the pick because Trevor Lawrence has such name cachet, has been in the college scene for so long that even casual fans know that he is a generational quarterback prospect. So if you play in a Superflex Dynasty League and you don't need a quarterback at the 101, I personally would not pick Trevor, or I personally would not pick Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Jamar Chase, like whoever you're thinking of picking. I would trade that pick, try and get the 102, 103, 104 back, and potentially pick up some value along the way.
Realistically, if you're looking at this, Trevor Lawrence's value in a dynasty startup right now, I've seen him picked in like the mid to late first round. So if you're talking about that, okay, from comparative value here, if you're trading the 101, you could probably net a return similar to like the 104 and 109, the 104, 108, something like that. Because
you might be able to trade the 101 for like, I don't know, like maybe like a mid-end running back. You might be able to get like a Dalvin Cook or a Tyreek Hill, even maybe. Like you might be able to get someone like that for the 101 because, as you said, you've seen Trevor Lawrence go as high as the first round. I've seen him go in the mid-high first round. I've seen him go even at like people that are hesitant on him are still picking him back of the first round in dynasty startups. I'm not there yet. I don't trust the Jacksonville Jaguars to do what's right for Trevor Lawrence yet. So I'm more so like in the camp of let's take him in like the third round where he probably belongs to go.
I've seen some people like, again, I'm fine with him in the second, but I've seen some people go as far as taking him over like, we'll just say Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert. I would take any, or even Russell Wilson. I'll take any one of those guys over Trevor Lawrence because what people love.
That's where it ends for me after those guys.
Yeah,
then I would take Trevor Lawrence, but like Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence is probably the conversation that you're going to be having. But those guys that you just mentioned have proven track records. We know their situations. We know they can produce for fantasy. And we're 99% sure that Trevor Lawrence can produce for fantasy, but there's that 1% chance, maybe even a 5% chance based on what I think the Jaguars are doing around him, that he doesn't produce for fantasy the way that we think he can.
Overall, just make sure like you gauge the room. And if you feel like, again, you have the 101 and people around you are viewing Trevor Lawrence as like this generational, like top 3 quarterback asset for the next 20 years, you can capitalize on that for sure.
Yeah, especially in more casual leagues where people, maybe they only know Trevor Lawrence in this entire draft class. Like there's a chance there's people in your
some people
league
like that.
They really just know Trevor Lawrence, maybe Devonta Smith as well, because they're just very high profile college players. And they want one of those two guys, and they don't really care about Zach Wilson or Trey Lance or some of these other great quarterbacks in this class. Then you can take advantage of that because Trevor Lawrence has been hyped up for years now, and that is a big thing in dynasty leagues to sell on hype, especially with rookie picks, because we're getting into rookie hype season, right? We don't have an NFL Combine this year, which is unfortunate because that's a big point of rookie hype season, but the lead up to the NFL draft will have people more and more going back to watch these guys and getting more and more hyped about them. So that was a lot of time on the 101, but I mean, it's important. It's the 101.
So
the 102, this will be a shocker to some people. My 102 is Zach Wilson. And I think Justin Fields and Trey Lance and the 2 running backs and the wide receivers are all incredible prospects. I think they're great prospects. Zach Wilson, to me, has elite fantasy potential. And the reason I say that is because of the projected, again, I'm going based on where I think he's going to go in the draft, where I've heard people way smarter than me, way more plugged into me than me say that he's going to go in the draft. And they think he's going to go to a team like Atlanta or Carolina or potentially San Francisco. If Zach Wilson goes to one of those teams, it will be very, very hard for me not to pick him over Trevor Lawrence. As good as Trevor Lawrence is, and he's one of the best quarterback prospects that there's ever been, quarterback landing spots matter a lot. And Zach Wilson, in his own right, has the Konami code as well. He is equally, if not more, athleticism than Trevor Lawrence. His deep accuracy down the field is the best I've ever seen from a college quarterback, which is crazy because he's at BYU. He's not throwing to, I don't know, name your deep threat receiver like Jaylen Waddle. He's not throwing to Jaylen Waddle down the field. He's throwing to guys that are not making it to the NFL, and he puts it on the money, perfect ball placement consistently. And that's a very, very rare trait for a college quarterback to have and is almost impossible to teach.
By the way, speaking about Zach Wilson, what we look for, again, a lot of these Konami quarterbacks, the thing that they are really all adept in is out of structure play. Can they make plays out of the pocket? Can they make plays on the move? And
can they run as well, too? And all four of these quarterbacks can. And you guys have heard me say this before. I said this is the best fantasy quarterback class in NFL history because, again, if you look back at last year, how many quarterbacks did we have that fit this mold, that could make plays out of structure, that had huge arms and could run? It was Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. And Joe Burrow didn't even have a huge arm. He just had arm talent. So you got 1.5 last year. 2 years ago, you had Kyler Murray and maybe half of Daniel Jones.
Wayne Haskins, bro.
Like 3 years ago, even just Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were really the only guys that could do that. Maybe Sam Darnold as well. But
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, this class is just ridiculous. The athleticism, the ability to throw on the run, structure plays, the arm talent in this class. Any one of these three quarterbacks after Trevor Lawrence could be the QB1 in most other classes.
Yeah, and I fully agree. And again, I've mentioned this multiple times, but I think those three quarterbacks after Lawrence would have been the quarterback 2 for me last year. And I actually tweeted this out. You could probably pull up the tweet.
All three of them statistically would have been based on my grading system.
Yeah, you could probably even pull up the tweet, but I tweeted out, rank these 7 quarterbacks from these last 2 drafts. So it was the 2021 draft prospects that we have coming in this year and last year's 2020 prospects. I basically outlined it. I mean, the second and the bottom, or the second to bottom and the bottom, were Tua and Justin Herbert. And filling in the cracks were those 3 other quarterbacks. Obviously, I have Lawrence at 1, Burrow at 2 for me personally. Those 3 other quarterbacks were right in between of that tier. So that just goes to show you. I mean, heck, Tua was a top 5 pick last year. Justin Herbert was a top 6 pick last year. I have 4 quarterbacks that I would have valued in the top 6 overall picks last year. That just it goes to show you how mind-boggling the talent
and there's more need around the NFL for quarterbacks this year than there was last year too. And there's more people within the top 10, more teams within the top 10 that need quarterbacks and probably don't have to move that much.
Yeah, for sure. No, I fully agree. I think Zach Wilson is definitely worth this pick. And as you mentioned, if he lands in a really good landing spot, he's going to be a fantastic contributor right off the bat. I mentioned that Lawrence is in his own tier at 101 for me. The second tier I have goes through 102 to 106. I'm just going to quickly outline those names. We're going to talk about them in a little later in depth once they're actually picked off the board. But 102 to 106, you got those 3 other quarterbacks: Lance, Wilson, Fields. You got Harris. You got Etienne. Those are the 5 names that I want, and I don't care for anybody else past those names. So to me, the top 6 overall picks in fantasy and rookie drafts this year are clear as day. People are going to mention some of the receivers, but I'm taking those workhorse running backs and I'm taking those 4 stud quarterbacks over any receivers and tight end in this draft. So I fully agree. I think Zach Wilson's a really good pick here. At the 3rd overall pick here, again, I mentioned that tier. I would be fine with any of these guys in here. Obviously, it's going to be team dependent, but say apples to apples right now, I'm picking the team from scratch and I have the 3rd overall pick. My pick's going to be Najee Harris, running back from Alabama. I mean, we've seen what this guy has been able to do over the course of his Alabama career. I mean, he, first of all, right off the bat, as a high school recruit, was the number 1 overall recruit in his class coming out. Alabama running backs typically have a slower time to really get acclimated because, again, they run a lot of committee early on.
Yeah, when he got to Alabama, he had
Josh Jacobs,
Bo Scarborough, Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris, all these guys ahead of him.
Brian Robinson, your boy.
Brian Robinson. And it's just hard to get on the field at Alabama, right? Like, they're always going to produce NFL caliber running backs, just the way Nick Saban operates his offense and the way his philosophy is designed. They prioritize running backs in recruiting, and it's a good thing they do. Look at all these successful Alabama running backs in the NFL right now, like Josh Jacobs, like Mark Ingram, like Derrick Henry. It's just a position that like Alvin Kamara, like Kenyon Drake, like there's just so many of them that went to Alabama at some point in their career and are successful in the league. So Najee Harris is basically the Konami code, but for running backs, basically, right?
Yeah, let me tell you, as a draft prospect, the only it's not even a concern because he's so good in the open field when he does have space. People are going to say, oh, he doesn't have the long speed for that elite fantasy running back too. I don't care. This guy may run a mid 4.5, early 4.5. That's not what makes him a really good running back. You're talking about this guy as an
By the way,
overall
that's what
player.
like Derrick Henry ran.
Yeah,
And that's what
4.53.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't Alvin Kamara run a 4.5?
He ran a 4.6, I believe, too.
Yeah, running back speed is a little overrated.
Agreed.
And I'll get to that. And you guys might think I'm a hypocrite based on the fact that I have Etienne ranked higher than Harris, but that's not why I have Etienne higher. It's a feather in Etienne's cap over Harris, but it's not why I have him higher. Both of these guys are great prospects.
Studs.
Yeah, they're both stud prospects. And you mentioned you had Lawrence in a tier at 101 by himself. I already talked about it. My first tier, I want one of those top 4 picks because I have Lawrence and Wilson and Etienne and Harris in a tier of their own. Because to me, those guys are cheat code fantasy prospects. And
yeah,
as good as Trey Lance is, as good as Justin Fields is, as good as my top 2 receivers are, as good as Kyle Pitts is, I have no concerns about these guys' ability to produce for fantasy. Again, once they land on whatever landing spot that they're in. So yeah, Najee Harris, you can't build a fantasy prospect much better because he's big. He can handle a workload. He has elite receiving ability, especially for someone of his size.
Best in the class, in my opinion. I mean,
he has probably the best feet of any big running back I've ever seen, too.
Let's briefly talk about his receiving ability because not a lot of people, like a lot of casuals, aren't going to bring it up. But this is a guy, nearly 10 yards per reception this year, over 11 last year. I mean, what we've seen from him in terms of verticality at the running back position, I've never seen a running back be able to just stretch vertically up and make catches the way this guy does.
He led the NCAA in yards after contact on receiving plays, too. And I believe Etienne was number 2. So these 2 guys give you that 3-down skill set. They give you a proven track record of being able to handle a workload, which is something we weren't able to say about Josh Jacobs. We're not able to say about Javonte Williams this very draft class. Those guys give you everything you can ask for. The only concern about Najee Harris is long speed and the fact that he's 23 years old.
I really could care less. I think this guy's going to step in right away. Again, depending where he lands, because we're not taking these guys right now. We're taking them once we know where they land. That's going to impact the tiers. But in a decent to good landing spot, this guy's going to be a top 12 running back as a rookie. 15 running back, maybe like a worst case scenario. Like this is just such a safe pick. I think this guy's going to be a ready-made fantasy superstar in no time, to be quite honest. Again, you mentioned the Konami code for quarterbacks. Well, for running backs, it's guys who can catch the ball and the guys that can get it in the end zone. Well, guess what? This guy this year, 30 touchdowns in 13 games and 43 receptions in 13 games as a running back, which is elite college fantasy production. So I'm all in. Najee Harris is my RB1. Again, you can make the case for Etienne, which I'm sure you're going to be doing soon as well. I think he's fantastic as well. But apples to apples right now, I have to take one of these guys, gun to the head. I'm taking Harris over him.
Yep. So we've made a lot of discussion about our own personal tiers, and me and Danny, like just between the 2 of us, we disagree on certain things. And what we're doing in our draft guide, which you can see on the bottom of the screen scrolling, is trying to give you guys the ability to make your own tiers and make your own decisions. Because you can listen to us and you can trust what we think, but everyone, the way that I break down college film is not complicated. I'm not an NFL draft scout. I've said this on numerous occasions. I think the way to look for fantasy success at a running back position, at the quarterback position, at the wide receiver position is very simple. And it comes down to a number of things that really any football fan can diagnose. So if you guys want more information on that, you can go pre-order the draft guide. I will be doing a series basically outlining how I evaluate these guys. And it's really not as complicated as you might think it is. Anybody can do it if you have some football knowledge. So Travis Etienne, you talked about him. He's my 104. He's actually my 103. I would pick him over Najee Harris. And basically what you get with Travis Etienne, I put out a thread a couple months ago going over the top 6 traits I think translate to fantasy and why they translate to fantasy with some proof about that. So you guys, I'll have it on the screen right now. You can go check out my Twitter. If you don't already follow me, make sure you follow both of us. And you can check out that thread and see what I'm talking about when I say this. But Travis Etienne has everything you can ask for from a fantasy running back, because I'm not dinging Najee Harris for not having long speed, but Travis Etienne has the elusiveness. He has the contact balance, best in the country 2 years ago. He has the receiving ability, as I mentioned, second most receiving yards after contact, just behind Najee Harris. He has the ability to pass protect with urgency, with decisiveness. Yeah. He's able to diagnose plays, and that comes with being a more experienced college player because he was a senior this year. He also has that ability to take a play 80 plus yards to the house, which Najee Harris probably doesn't unless the play is perfectly blocked and all that kind of stuff. But to me, Travis Etienne is Aaron Jones. He's the guy I compared him to. He is exactly like, it's my favorite comparison of this entire draft class. I think they're totally similar. And Travis Etienne, much like Aaron Jones, knows how to punch the ball into the end zone on the goal line as well. And that's something that was a question for Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year, and has been a question for him. Even like I watched the Super Bowl last night. He's not a big running back, and neither is Travis Etienne, but Etienne knows how to get skinny. He knows how to get into the end zone. And what scores the most fantasy points for fantasy players? Touchdowns. Like that's what scores those fantasy points. If you get goal line opportunities, we want you to get in the end zone on those goal line opportunities.
Again, so touchdowns and receptions is what scores in fantasy football. Especially, again, everybody and their mother nowadays are playing any type of PPR format, whether we're talking about half PPR or full PPR. Well, guess what? These top two running backs this year, their best traits are their ability to score and their ability to catch the ball.
Yes.
Which is insane. And as you mentioned, again, with Etienne, you mentioned the breakaway speed. I actually had him comp to Jamal Charles in that regard. I think this is a guy who should be pushing the mid 4.3s, give or take. And we've seen it multiple times on film. You give this guy a small crease, a small sliver to go through, he's going 80 to the house. I mean, I still remember opening game 2 years ago. He catches a little screen pass on the like the 7-yard line and takes it 93 yards to the house. That's a type of upside, type of potential you see with Etienne. Again, I like Harris's overall game better, but that does not mean that I wouldn't be able to take an Etienne in the top 4 or 5 of my rookie draft.
Full disclosure, I think Najee Harris is a better NFL prospect than Travis Etienne, but I think Travis Etienne's a better fantasy prospect, and that's the difference. We're the fantasy stock exchange. We're not NFL draft scouts.
We're not NFL scouts. That's Corey's Corey's motto.
Yeah, it's my motto, because I think everyone online tries to pretend to be a scout, and that's not really what you should be doing if you're giving fantasy advice, because NFL draft scouting is different. It's not the same thing. Certain things translate better to the NFL. People will talk about Travis Etienne's lateral agility, his ability to run with patience and nuance. But guess what? He is decisive for a reason. It's because he can find the holes quickly, he can hit the hole quickly, and he can take 80 yards quickly. So there's a reason he runs like that. It's not because he lacks patience or lacks nuance. It's because he doesn't need it. There's a reason Le'Veon Bell and David Montgomery need it. It's because they don't have 4.3 speed.
Also, real quick, what an anti-analytics year for running backs. Just to briefly mention, the two best running backs in this draft are seniors. So,
and they're I guess one has BMI, one doesn't have BMI. They there
you go.
One guy has
one guy's got elite breakout age, the other one
guy's got elite prospect profile coming out of high school. Like it's really anti situation. But yeah, to me, we both agree on this. We have them in different orders, but we agree these two guys are the cream of the crop at the running back position. They are the two guys that can change your dynasty roster. They're the two guys that I could see 1 year from now being first round startup picks, depending on where they land, because I think they both have elite fantasy potential. And I wrote that in my player cards in the draft guide. I said both of these guys have the potential to be Alvin Kamara's and Derrick Henry's and Dalvin Cook's, guys that we pick early in the first round of redraft leagues and early in the first round of dynasty leagues as well.
For sure. I fully agree. As we mentioned, going to move on to the 5th overall pick now. And we both agree this comes down to the other two quarterbacks in this class, Justin Fields or Trey Lance. And again, when it comes post NFL draft and I'm taking these guys, landing spot's going to be fully dependent here. But as we know now, I'm going to go with my quarterback 2 overall in this class, and that's going to be Justin Fields, quarterback from Ohio State. I mean, what we have seen from this guy these past 2 years has really been mind-boggling. Again, people are going to point out the fact, it's an Ohio State quarterback. I don't trust Ohio State quarterbacks when they go to the NFL. Nada, because guess what? He doesn't got bricks for feet like Dwayne Haskins, and he can actually throw the ball. Unlike what's his name, RJ Barrett wannabe JT, JT Barrett back in the day, or Cardale Jones
or whatever.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Justin Fields has elite arm talent. This guy stretches all levels of field with ease. I mean, people. It boggles me. People on Twitter think this guy struggles with his arm talent because they'll watch a clip of him throwing an interception and be like, oh, he's not got an NFL, blah, blah, blah. No, I've seen this guy slice windows from 40 yards away and deliver the ball accurately, on time, with velocity.
This guy's become a higher high school recruit than Trevor Lawrence without having arm talent, because Justin Fields was the higher recruit.
Yeah.
On 24/7 Sports. If you look it up, I guess it'd be 2016 or 2017 recruiting class, Justin Fields was the quarterback 1 and Trevor Lawrence was the quarterback 2. So you don't get that unless you have some arm talent, because we know what Trevor Lawrence's arm talent is.
Yes, 100%. Again, I still have that clip in my mind of that bomb against Clemson. I think
Chris Olave catch.
Man,
Yeah.
he just completely stretches it. First of all,
he's under pressure too, and he sidesteps a defender in the pocket while he throws that.
Man, he's actually unreal in that regard. And again, we've mentioned multiple times, Konami quarterback. This guy's got elite arm talent. And we're not even mentioning his playmaking and his overall athletic potential, because this is a guy who should be pushing, what, mid to high 4.5s? Yeah, that's what I was about to say, mid to high 4.5s. And his out-of-structure type play, again, we mentioned it for all these quarterbacks, is phenomenal. But Justin Fields is no slouch in that regard as well. I mean, this guy's going out of the pocket. He's making plays with his feet. We've seen this guy multiple times. He's able to get the rushing yards. He's able to get rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's just a phenomenal prospect. And as we mentioned, guess what? Draft capital for quarterbacks is very indicative of
it's indicative for every position.
Yeah. But like in terms of like their early opportunity, like a high first round pick is going to get the chance to be able to start right away. Well, guess what? In every mock draft you see, this guy's going to go.
There's a good chance this is the second overall pick in the NFL draft.
100%. So I love Justin Fields. Getting him at the 5 here. As crazy as it sounds, this guy would be the 102, 103 last year, in my opinion. So getting him at the 105 here, again, an elite top 12 to 14 type overall quarterback asset, I think is a phenomenal pick. And I'm just going to slide him in here and not think twice about it.
Yeah. And I have him as quarterback 4. It's not because I don't like Justin Fields. I actually, you mentioned Tua last year. I have Justin Fields rated higher than I had Tua last year. So he would have been my quarterback 2 last year, but he's my quarterback 4 in this draft class. My concerns with Justin Fields, his ability under pressure was not great. His quarterback rating was one of the lower ones of the notable quarterbacks in this draft class. And his deep ball accuracy is not even remotely close to what Zach Wilson's is. So, and
I mean, to be fair, Zach Wilson's,
we want deep plays, right? Like we want our quarterback slinging bombs 60 yards downfield. And if Justin Fields is going to overthrow 6 or 7 of those in an NFL season, that's 4 or 5 touchdowns that could have been on his stat sheet, right? So I have no qualms with anyone saying Justin Fields is the second best quarterback. I think these guys are all very interchangeable, and I like all 4 of them. So speaking of all 4 of them, Trey Lance is the next guy I have off the board. He is my quarterback 3. And the reason he's my quarterback 3 over Justin Fields is I think Justin Fields compared to Trey Lance, and we'll get into this when we get into more kind of prospect v prospect stuff, just a teaser for you guys. Justin Fields does a lot of things better inside a structure than Trey Lance does. He's a very schoolyard type of quarterback, which kind of comes when you play for an FCS school and you're clearly the most talented player, not only on your team, but in the entire conference, in the entire league. Trey Lance basically was that offense. And you can see that if I'll put this on the screen right now, but I tweeted out the rushing production of the quarterbacks in this draft class. And Trey Lance is significantly more productive as a runner than any one of these other 3 quarterbacks, despite all 3 of them probably having similar athleticism or all 4 of them having similar athleticism. Trey Lance was asked to do so much as a runner. And I think that's going to continue to the next level. And we've seen from guys like Lamar Jackson, we've seen from guys like Josh Allen, it makes your transition easier to the NFL if you're able to run. And if Trey Lance is a Carolina Panther, if he's a Denver Bronco, if he's a Detroit Lion, there's a chance that he's in a bad situation and he needs to run for his life to get wins for his team and to help survive back there. And running equals fantasy points. And that's why I like Trey Lance over Justin Fields, even though they're both very mobile.
Agreed. Like, again, people don't realize, as crazy as it sounds, taking a non-rushing quarterback is actually such a huge detriment to your team, because rushing production is just so much from a proportional standpoint.
Look
so much more valuable.
Tom Brady threw 40 touchdowns. 40.
What, quarterback 8?
Yeah, like it's pretty ridiculous when you look up. I'll actually pull it up. I don't have it offhand right now, but while I'm editing this, I'll pull it up on the screen. The quarterbacks that ranked ahead of Tom Brady in fantasy points, no one in their right mind would probably argue that some of these quarterbacks are better passers than Tom Brady. It's because they run the ball that they're ahead in fantasy points. And that's why we play fantasy and we analyze these guys, is because there's edges that you can get. Like if you look at everything from a pure NFL perspective, it's not the same 1-to-1. Like Tom Brady just won the Super Bowl. Obviously, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, But from a fantasy perspective, he needs to have an absolutely bonkers efficiency number. He needs to basically just carry the entire offense from a passing perspective to be better than some of these rushing quarterbacks for fantasy.
Get this. So in quarterbacks that played, we'll say 10 plus games, Tom Brady was the quarterback 10 in points per game, despite throwing 40 touchdowns.
Yeah.
The type of guys ahead of him, guys like Ryan Tannehill, who does have that type of rushing production, Lamar Jackson, Justin.
No
Herbert,
one is arguing that Lamar Jackson is a better quarterback than Tom Brady, but Lamar Jackson is much better for fantasy than Tom Brady.
Because guess what? That guy's got 1,000-yard rushing upside. So I fully agree. Again, you mentioned Trey Lance having that athleticism, and maybe right away won't necessarily have the line in place to be a quote-unquote pocket quarterback. Therefore, he has to get out of the pocket and make plays with his feet. I fully agree. And Trey Lance, guess what? He may be the best overall rushing quarterback in this draft. I mean, what we saw from him 2 years ago, 16 rushing touchdowns, led NDSU, who quite frankly is an FCS team, to so much success. I mean, we've seen this guy. He's just a freak in the open field. And honestly, I mean, it's going to be scary. Similar to kind of what we saw.
Sound like a broken record right now with these quarterbacks, but that's how good this class is. They're all so good for fantasy that it's like, yeah, like this is the best quarterback draft in fantasy history because they all have the same skill set, and that skill set translates very well to fantasy.
100%. So we'll kind of run through the second half a little quicker because we're.
I'll focus 32. On the next two picks pretty in depth because they matter a lot too. But after that, it's really pick your poison, I think. But
100%. So as I mentioned, the 102 to 106 for me is its own tier with the guys we just mentioned. I also have a tier here at 107 to 109, and that's going to be the guy I'm going to take next, Devonta Smith. The guy I'm sure Bush is going to take next, Jamarr Chase. And then for me personally, I have Waddle at the end of that at 109. But talking about Devonta Smith, I mean, what more can be said? I get that this guy did it at an older age, but what he did this year was the best receiving season I have ever seen from a collegiate receiver. I mean, you're talking about 13 games. This guy had nearly 1,900 yards and 23 touchdowns. Like, just how mind-boggling that is. But talking about this player, because let's be honest here, you can't take those stats and just put them in the next level. Say, oh yeah, you're one. That's what you're gonna do. No. Okay. Talking about the player himself, the two things that come to mind when I think of Devonta Smith, first and foremost, nuance and polish. This guy just knows how to play receiver at an extremely high level. And a lot of people are going to point at metrics right away. But Justin Jefferson was that guy last year who kind of went under the radar, but just knew how to play the position to an extremely high level. And guess what? Year one, 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns, unanimously by the majority of the community, a top 5 overall dynasty receiver. Like, I see Devonta Smith being the guy in this class who has that type of trajectory simply because I think he can step into the NFL tomorrow and be a productive NFL receiver. I mean, again,
he stepped into the NFL last year and been a productive receiver.
Bold take. He was a better receiver than Jerry Jeudy was in 2019. He had 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns in 2019. But people have to wrap around their minds because people love bringing out all these advanced analytic metrics. Oh, he's old. He did it at a younger age. It would have been more impressive. No, I don't care because let's be honest. Context matters. The Alabama wide receiver room is the best corpse. Like over these past 5 years, we maybe ever seen in NFL history in terms of an overall
first-round picks in that core when Devonta Smith got there, including himself and Jaylen Waddle, who will be first-round picks this year.
A possible 6th next year.
Like, it's crazy. Overall pick. Jerry Jeudy was the 15th overall pick, and Calvin Ridley was like the 24th overall pick a couple years ago. So that's what Devonta Smith had to deal with in terms of production for targets. We're not even talking about the fact that this is a run-first offense who has a first-round pick at running back with Josh Jacobs, a second-round pick or third-round pick with Damian Harris, and another probably first or second-round pick with Najee Harris. So not only is he competing with that, he's got to compete with the running backs, and I think O.J. Howard might have even been there when he was there his freshman season. So 17, yeah. And Irv Smith was there too. So this is just a talent team. This team is just baked in talent. Like, you can't get the ball to everybody, and Devonta Smith producing is better than him not producing, whether it came at a young age, late age, whatever. This is a team that I'm willing to exempt any and all metrics that are indicative of when you broke out or some of the things. Because if Devonta Smith was at TCU and he broke out at 22 years old, then it's a different story. It's completely different. If you break out to Alabama, probably because you weren't seeing consistent snaps until you're 21.
But dude, Jalen Reagor's better than him because he broke out at 18, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Devonta Smith, you said, is the 107.
Marvin Harrison.
Agree. Pardon?
Marvin Harrison's who I see with him. Marvin Harrison. And people are going to say, oh, well, that's an NFL Hall of Fame type talent. Devonta Smith, potential-wise, could end up there. Because the way he already plays the game now, I get 23 years old, is similar to what we saw from Marvin Harrison. And that was a guy who perennially was 120 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 10 touchdowns.
Yep. So the next receiver, you already teased him. I'm taking Jamar Chase here at the 108. And Jamar Chase it's the typical like projection versus production argument, because while Chase did have elite production his sophomore season, he sat out this year. And before I sat down and watched Jamar Chase, I was like, I don't even need to see anything. I know this guy can play. I don't think he would have even benefited from coming back this year because he could have gotten injured. I disagree with that take now that I've watched him, because there is parts of his game that are not developed yet. And he was 19 years old when he produced a 20 touchdown season and 1,800 yards with Joe Burrow. But there is still questions about him. Like one of them being the fact that how much of that was Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, who we've seen at a very productive level in the NFL, how much of that was Justin Jefferson drawing attention away from Jamar Chase? So there is questions about Jamar Chase's game, but nonetheless, this is a guy that is a physical possession receiver with elite downfield ability. His ability to track the ball, go up and get it, make tough plays under constant duress is something that you can build upon if you're an NFL head coach or receiver coach trying to coach this guy up at the next level. His only questions are really the same questions I had about his teammate last year. Can he get off of press consistently? Because the Auburn corners really gave Jamar Chase trouble at the line with Noah Igbenogany, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but they're very physical corners. And I want to just see Chase kind of develop more of that physicality, and that could come with age and with potentially adding some weight to his frame, because I think this is a guy that has legitimate Chris Godwin type potential, legitimate AJ Brown type potential in terms of his frame, his play style, and his body type.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about Jamar Chase right off the bat, the first thing that screams up to me is his verticality and his ball skills. People love using the frame. I don't like 50-50 receivers, yada, yada. I get it if you didn't like 50-50 receivers, but guess what? Jamar Chase is like an 80-20 receiver.
And he can get open too. He's not like completely reliant on 50-50 balls.
100%. So the guy I kind of saw, people, like if they're watching this, might cringe when they're hearing this comparison. The guy I saw is Justin Blackman. Before we say, oh yeah, Justin Blackman flamed out of the NFL, yada, yada, he flamed out of the NFL because of his mentals. His mentals were not there. But as a prospect, in terms of production, in terms of play style, in terms of overall NFL draft pedigree.
Did he win the Biletnikoff twice?
Yeah, 1,800 yards.
Do that?
I believe so. Let me just check, because I believe he had 2 straight 1,800 yard and 20 touchdown seasons with Brandon Weeden throwing him the ball back in the day. So Justin Blackman back then. Just give me a second.
Yeah, Justin Blackman, I don't think anyone can deny the fact that he was a great prospect. He flamed out because of bad decision-making on his personal front.
Okay, so nearly 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns in his second season starting. And then in his third season starting in 13 games, 122 catches, nearly 1,600 yards and 18 touchdowns. For the record, that 2010 season, you mentioned Jamar Chase had what, 1,780 and 20 touchdowns that year?
Something like that, yeah.
Well, that's exactly what Justin Blackman put up. And you mentioned the metrics. He ran a 4.46. That's probably around what Jamar Chase is going to put up.
I think I have my prediction at a 4.44 for Jamar Chase.
Yeah. 6'1", 207, similar size.
Like the exact same size.
Similar play style. Like these guys, to me, are just identical. And again, you mentioned the draft capital. Justin Blackman's the 5th overall pick. We're talking about
Jamar Chase going 6th overall to the Eagles. Like I'm almost ready to write it in pen right now.
Again, I still think if Justin Blackman had his head on straight, he had 850 yards and 5 touchdowns as a rookie. He would have been a really good receiver in the league. So I agree here. Again, Jamar Chase, my wide receiver 3 overall in this class. I think he's a phenomenal player as well. The guy that I slightly have over him, I'm going to be taking here at the 109. And it's going to be Devonta Smith's teammate, because I'm going to be taking Jaylen Waddle here. And I get it. A lot of analytics. Actually, weirdly enough, some analytics people like like him
I
now.
know. It's weird.
Even though he's got bad analytics, I don't know. But regardless, I'm glad that people are starting to catch up to the fact that the Alabama receivers aren't going to have good analytics, because this guy just moves differently. Everybody loves the phrase built different. Jaylen Waddle is just built different from a movement ability standpoint. Watching this guy in the open field is basically just like watching a gazelle on a fucking hill, because let's be honest here, that's how this guy moves. I mean, we're talking about a guy who, quite frankly, is probably going to run a high 4.2, low 4.3 type.
Yeah, there's a video of him racing Henry Ruggs, who ran a 4.27, and probably, if it weren't for a bad jump at the combine, would have broken John Ross's record. So if Jaylen Waddle is as fast as Henry Ruggs is, then he's running a 4.2. And one thing that he does better than Ruggs is his agility in space. And this is coming from the Ruggs truther himself.
And his verticality, in my opinion.
Henry Ruggs, to me, was a better prospect than Jaylen Waddle from a complete receiver perspective, in my opinion. But what Jaylen Waddle gives you after the catch and from an agility perspective is actually greater than what Henry Ruggs gave you. And Jaylen Waddle is going to get draft capital. Again, talking about draft capital, very
top 15 overall pick.
He's going to be a top 15, probably top 20 at minimum pick in the NFL draft, and he's going to have every opportunity to prove himself as an elite fantasy receiver. My only qualm with Jaylen Waddle, basically, is that I think he's going to be one of those high ceiling, low floor fantasy assets that is probably not a number one receiver on his team. He could prove me wrong. If he goes to like the Giants at 11, he's probably the best receiver on that team, but I don't know how much volume he's going to get as a result of that. I think he's going to be more of an efficiency dependent type of receiver.
You know who his comp was for me?
Who's that?
That basically fits that to a T and had top 5 overall fantasy wide receiver ceiling.
I know who your comp is, and I'm going to come with a counterpoint.
I'm going to say T.Y. Hilton here.
Okay, who is T.Y. Hilton's quarterback?
Okay, Andrew Luck. But
yeah, so if Jaylen Waddle lands in a situation where he has a quarterback like that, then yes, I'm willing to bet on Jaylen Waddle. As I mentioned, we are going to change these based on landing spot. But if he has Daniel Jones as his quarterback, or if he has...
We can say that for any of these receivers, to be fair, though.
Yeah, it definitely downgrades them. But usually talent will win out to some degree. But I think not having an elite quarterback will deter Jaylen Waddle if that is the case.
Definitely. But just talking about the overall baseline, you guys can check it out. I'm sure it'll be linked in the description from Corey. But our 2 articles, Corey talked about Etienne earlier. I'm talking about Jaylen Waddle. Well, guess what? Those 2 free articles are over on our site, thefantasystockexchange.com. You guys can go pre-order the draft guide now. And quite frankly, before you even decide to, you get to read those articles, full in-depth 8-page type breakdowns of each of these players. And let me tell you, what I saw from Jaylen Waddle, this is an elite separator and a dynamic athlete who, quite frankly, people want to say these small receivers can't go up and get it from a verticality standpoint. That's one of the most underrated abilities of Jaylen Waddle. The overall ability of him to track down these passes, to make catches outside of his frame. I mean, I just think he's super consistent and super good at that regard. So, yeah, I love Jaylen Waddle.
Weird skill set, man. It's not a lot of times that you see a speed receiver and a yards after catch receiver that good in contested catch situations.
I know, right?
I'm actually a little surprised he isn't better in some of the other more tailored to his skill set areas. Like it's a little bit of a weird prospect, but that's a good thing because I think he'll be able to be coached up quite easily at the next level. And I really like him as a prospect too. He's currently my wide receiver 4, but the top 4 guys that I have at my wide receiver position, I really like all of them. They all kind of bring something different to the table. But speaking of one last running back who I'm going to pick here, are we at the 110 right now?
110, yep.
All right, so at the 110, I'm going to take Javonte Williams, the running back from North Carolina. And maybe some of you expected him to go sooner than this. I've heard a lot of people say maybe they have him ranked higher than Etienne. Maybe some people even have him higher than Harris. I think Javonte Williams is a great NFL prospect. He's a good runner. He's a tough runner. He's physical. He knows how to find the holes. He's got good speed. He's got good receiving ability. He's great in pass protection. He brings everything you could want out of a running back. But my issue with Javonte Williams and why I have him ranked lower than those other guys is, one, he doesn't have the receiving ability of either of them, let alone Najee Harris, who I think is the best receiving back in this class. And he doesn't have the speed that Etienne has, which, and another thing that I think is a little bit against him too, is I noticed he struggled a little bit on the goal line, which is kind of weird for a physical runner. But as far as like short area, kind of finding holes on the goal line and short yardage, he wasn't as good as the other 2 guys. So to me, he's kind of just a B-Tech version of those other 2 guys. I think he's just slightly behind them. But I still think he has the potential of, I mean, we're talking about Javonte Williams next year at this time, similar to the way we're talking about Cam Akers. similar to the way that we're talking about J.K. Dobbins. Like, I think he is that caliber of prospect, but I don't think he's the first round talent that the other two running backs are. And I think landing spot is also going to be very important for him in draft capital. I think he's going to get top 50 draft capital. Hopefully he lands in a spot maybe like Atlanta or like Pittsburgh, where he's like the feature back and he gets all the carries, because I think that's exactly what he could use at the next level. I think he's going to be similar, though, to someone like maybe Nick Chubb from a receiving perspective. I don't think he's going to be a guy that catches 70 balls in a season, but he could definitely, be like Josh Jacobs or Nick Chubb,
40.
catching 40, 50 passes. And that'll be more than enough to make him like a kind of a mid to low end RB1 for fantasy. I just don't see that top 5 ceiling like I do with those other two guys.
I fully agree. Again, Javonte Williams is a very good running back, and he's on really his tier of his own in terms of like that tier 2 of backs in this class. Then
I don't think there's anybody even close to Javonte Williams as a running, as my running.
So,
I don't even know who my running back 4 is right now, because I haven't watched all the bigger name guys that people are hyping up as the running back 4. But honestly, in this class, if you had a guy that went in the 7th round as your running back 4, it wouldn't really shock me, because no one to me stands out as the clear running back 4 behind these top 3 guys. I
agree. Again, like if I end up seeing like Trey Sermon, like even like Kenny Gainwell in the first round of these rookie drafts, I will want that 201, because again, one of these names we're going to mention later on too are going to fall. And speaking of those names, again, obviously Javonte Williams, fantastic pick, 110. I think he's well worth that. Again, running backs mean a lot in fantasy, and getting a guy in Javonte Williams who at minimum should be an RB2 right off the bat with the solid workload, I think is a slam dunk. However, going to the 111, we mentioned positional scarcity, and yes, this was a hard choice between these next 2 names. I'm sure you're going to take the other one in the next pick, but we mentioned positional scarcity. And we mentioned overall top 5. Heck, I think this guy's got top 2 or 3 type upside in the right situation. I'm taking Kyle Pitts from Florida, tight end. I mean, what we see from this guy, people want to classify the term move tight end. Guys that are able to split wide, guys that are able to give you a lot from a route running, from a verticality standpoint. On the outside, not even just in line. Kyle Pitts fits that to the T. He is the modern day athletic tight end that is really a Swiss Army knife for these new offenses. Because let's be honest, we saw it in the Super Bowl. Travis Kelce is the main name in the tight end circle. What
Both
he's able to do.
Had a great game in that game.
I was going to mention Gronk as well. From the career standpoint, we're seeing those guys are 2 of the top 3 overall players at their position of all time. But anyways, let's talk about Kyle Pitts, because this is a guy who I think ceiling wise, my comparison would be like a Darren Waller type who can split wide, who can run the routes. And quite frankly, if anybody's able to make Kyle Trask look good, I'm going to value them completely, because what we saw from this guy on a routine basis, he was high pointing the ball with ease. He has fucking mitts for hands. And people want to say, oh, well, he's not a good blocker. I don't know if he's going to get on the field. First of all, I value the receiving traits tremendously over the blocking. And second of all, he's a solid stock blocker. Like, he's able to close that line. He's able to make room for his running back. So I don't get why people want to make these or formulate these concerns in their heads, because let's be honest, I think this is just prospect fatigue at this point for people that are trying to take down Kyle Pitts, because this guy is going to be a top 5 overall player on my big board. Take a shot. And he's going to get top 10 to 15 overall draft capital. We're mentioning these young tight ends coming into the NFL in recent years. As good as TJ Hawkinson was, Kyle Pitts can be higher for me than even Hawkinson was.
Yeah, especially from a fantasy perspective too, because 100%. We didn't have those concerns about Hawkinson's blocking ability and stuff. But here's the thing: blocking doesn't equal fantasy points.
Exactly.
It equals getting on the field to potentially score fantasy points, but I don't think Kyle Pitts is a detriment as a blocker. And maybe it takes him a bit longer. Maybe his first season he's not really that productive because he's got to learn how to block at the next level. But I think this guy's a second-year breakout at minimum. I think he could even break out his rookie season. But I think by his second year, he should be a valuable fantasy asset for you, of course, depending on landing spot. But if he lands in a great position, man, he might move up this board, because he is far and away the best tight end in this class.
And just mentioning, if he was a receiver alone, he would probably crack that top 4 tier. I mean, at minimum, he'd be in the tier with those 4 receivers. But, man, we're talking about this guy from a nuanced standpoint. His footwork is tremendous at the line. He can get off press. We mentioned his verticality. His route running is insane for a guy of his size. I mean, this guy's got all the receiving talent in the world, is going to have the draft capital, and is going to be the focal point of an offense as soon as, at minimum, his second year. So I fully agree. Again, getting him at the 111 here at a position like tight end that is dearth of many elite options. I think Kyle Pitts can absolutely be an elite option quite quickly, to be quite honest.
Yeah, especially if he goes to a place like New England or Arizona,
yes,
who are desperate for either a number one receiver in New England's case or a consistent player outside of DeAndre Hopkins for Arizona. I think Arizona's offense too, like a spread type system, you can move him into the slot. That'd be the dream fit for Kyle Pitts if you want him to be successful for fantasy.
Heck, we didn't even mention, like, what if the Bengals don't take O-line at 5?
Oh, geez, they're not going to take a tight end at 5. But
imagine
if they trade it down, I could see it happening. That wouldn't make that would make a bit of sense there too.
Imagine.
So to the next guy, this is the last of the first round, and one thing I want to hammer home: if you guys made it at this point in the video, I want you to comment down below. First round picks are king this year, because this, to me and Danny, you guys noticed we had differing opinions throughout this, but these 12 players that we have are all the same 12. We think these are the cream of the crop of this year's class. Maybe some people are going to be mad in the comment section. We didn't talk about Rondale Moore. I just highly suggest you to go watch some film on Rondale Moore before you say something like that.
But bro, breakout age.
Yeah, because he broke out early, so everyone likes him.
He broke out early and has a first percentile yards per reception.
Yeah, I want to point that out too. But Rashod Bateman is the last guy I'm going to take here, and to me, this is a massive teardrop. And it's not because I don't like Terrace Marshall, who I actually haven't fully watched in depth yet, so I'm not going to pick on him. I think he's a solid receiver. Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's a number of solid receivers, but to me, this is the last of the first round talent from an NFL perspective, receivers in this class. And Rashod Bateman is someone that gives you a lot of differing things from guys like Jaylen Waddle, guys like Devonta Smith, even Jamar Chase. Rashod Bateman is more of a possession receiver, which means, in my opinion, the reason he is at 112 and not higher, because I do have him ranked higher than Jaylen Waddle for fantasy purposes, but he is going to be more dependent on landing spot than some of these other guys, because he needs a position where he is going to have an opportunity for high target volume, because he's a possession receiver. I compared him to Michael Thomas in my player cards.
Keenan Allen for me.
Yeah, so he's a guy who's going to need to get the ball. He's going to need to be moved around the formation, potentially moved into the slot a bit to get some mismatches and get that high target volume. The one thing he can do, though, that you can't take away from him, what is the primary job of a wide receiver? And it's true for Devonta Smith as well. Get open and catch the ball. He is one of the best in this class at getting open and catching the ball, which is the primary job of a wide receiver. Is he going to blaze past you in a 40-yard dash race? No, but he's going to get off the line. Also, his best trait is ability to beat press with physicality, with toughness. Yeah. He is just he's just an X-receiver. That's what he is. He's a lot like Michael Thomas. He's a lot like, if Chicago doesn't bring back Allen Robinson, he makes perfect sense to replace him. He is just the modern day X-receiver who can pretty much do everything you ask him to do, except for really stretch the field deep, because that's not part of his game.
100%. I mean, we're mentioning it's, again, prototypical X receiver. You mentioned his ability against press. With, as we mentioned, we look for, like, these guys who aren't going to blaze past you, but again, can create separation, have great hands. He can really have some good big slot type versatility, as we've seen from guys like Keenan Allen and Michael Thomas. They're big bodies that can create space right off the bat, like within the first second of the play being diagnosed, and be able to just catch the ball from their frame with ease. Rashod Bateman, I've said multiple times, if there's any, like, aside from Devonta Smith, NFL ready receiver, I think Rashod Bateman may be it. I think he can step in and in the right situation be an 1,100-yard type receiver. I really think it's that case.
Oh, Michael Thomas did his rookie season. I could definitely see him doing something like that.
Like, Rashod Bateman is my wide receiver 4, but as I have mentioned multiple times, this tier of 4 receivers is just so far ahead of everything else, and they're so close grouped together. I've said it. I have no qualms if someone wants to rank Rashod Bateman as their wide receiver 1. I have no qualms if they want to rank, I'll have more qualms to this degree if they want to rank Devonta Smith as their 4. But at the same time, all these guys, everybody knows they're the top 4 players, except for the people that want to make it in their heads that Rondale Moore is here. But I love Rashod Bateman. And I think, as you mentioned, in terms of a reliability standpoint, he's going to find his way on the field soon, if not week 1. Possibly by week 3 minimum, because he's just polished and he knows how to play the position. And he knows how to get open.
Another one of those guys too that produced at a young age. We saw him produce as a sophomore at 19 years old, and he had a 1,200-1,300 yard season with like 1,211 whatever. And that's great production from someone like that. And he's not going to get fantasy points from the same way that Jaylen Waddle will, with huge plays after the catch and great plays downfield. But in the red zone, create separation, big body. He could definitely catch a couple touchdowns in the red zone. So certain players, the receiver position is very nuanced. There's if you need a big body receiver, we talk about the basketball team theory all the time. If you need a big body receiver in this class, Jamarr Chase and Rashod Bateman are your guys. If you need more of a separator, speed element, yards after the catch type, Waddle and Smith are your guys.
100%. I fully agree. But yeah, that just about wraps out the first round. Again, you guys can see the timestamps down below if you made it this far in the video. These are the top 12 players. These are the top 12 skill positions. People are going to have arguments for other guys. But
you can pre-order our draft guide and go read our articles basically breaking down these players. And again, if you don't believe us, you can watch my series based on how I evaluate these players and make your own determinations yourself. And we'll be more than happy to have discussions with you in the comment section about these players. But we just ask that you watch them yourself before you comment.
Yeah.
We know Twitter is a very noisy place where people just throw out takes just to throw out takes. And we don't condone that here. We like to do our research before we throw out takes, which is why it's February 8th. And we're giving you our first rookie mock draft, because we could have come on here early January and done this, but we wanted to sit down and actually watch these players before we did that. So
100%.
If you guys appreciate the content that you guys found here, I encourage you to leave a like on this video. Encourage you to comment any of your thoughts based on your rookie picks, maybe your personal dynasty teams. We'll do our best to help you with that. If you want more personalized advice too, join our Discord. We had Jeff, shout out to Jeff. He put a very lengthy discussion about his dynasty team. We had to help him out with that, and we appreciate him for pre-ordering our draft guide as well. So subscribe to the channel if you guys are new as well, and hit the bell icon so you're notified anytime we post videos.
Real quick before we head out of here, appreciate that, Jeff. And again, leave your feedback, leave your comments down below. We are happy to engage and help you guys out. Again, we're all in it together. We all want to see everybody succeed in that Discord, and we're all here for each other. So with that being said, yeah, Jeff, hopefully you got some value out of this video. Again, they basically hit to a T what you were asking with your questions. So hopefully you enjoyed, and everybody else watching this, hopefully you enjoyed as well, and we're able to grab the value.
For sure. Yep. Peace out, guys, and enjoy your Monday.
Why you need the money?